welcome to the Mindset Michelle TV show. I'm so super excited for you to be joining us today for yet another amazing and incredible episode. And we have yet again another special guest today. Hello, Aurelie.
Hi, Michelle. Nice to see you.
Lovely to see you too. And for those that haven't come across Aurelie Hervet, this beautiful young woman sitting in front of you on screen is actually a relationships coach. She's been doing this for a number of years and specializing in strong and independent women and now also men. But as we're getting towards Christmas and we're coming towards the end of the year, I thought it was an extra special time to talk to somebody like Aurelie, to talk about relationships with others and with yourselves. And I always love this question. Aurelie, can you please tell us, how did you become a relationships coach?
Sure. So it came at the back of my own breakup. I had totally lost myself in that relationship. So I was 4 years with an Aussie guy, really lovely man. But at the end, I had totally lost myself. So I went through a journey of personal development, really working on myself and rediscovering myself, what felt right, what my values were, what my dreams were, and eventually got down the path of becoming a coach myself. So I've been coaching as a life coach for 6 years and specialized in relationship along the way, because that's really where my heart is, and being French, I think it adds another layer of what romance means to me. Yeah, so that's pretty much how it happened.
Wonderful. And of course, people do associate French people with the language of love, and it is such a beautiful, beautiful language when you hear it spoken. I guess you have shared some of that journey of how you came into being a coach on the back of having a difficult relationship. What then, in terms of love, work, whatever it might be, and because you've also now set up a business for a number of years. So what does for you success mean now?
So success for me is way more than money. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My parents had their own business and they were always in the business. And my mom consistently burning out. And as a little girl, I made the decision that when I grow up, I'll have my own business. It's going to be super successful, but that means that I'm also enjoying the process. That means I'm full of energy. I have time to spend with my children. So that's pretty much what I'm setting up with my business, like putting systems, processes, and people in place so that I make sure that I look after myself first, because it has such a tremendous ripple effect on my clients, on the people I work with, and obviously on my life.
Wonderful. And I really hear that beautiful way that, seeing the example as a child and then recognizing that there are elements, there was good and bad elements to what your parents were doing, but you wanted to create what many people refer to as a lifestyle business. So one where you still have the time and the energy. I like that word, energy, the energy to enjoy having your own business, rather than being too busy and working too much. And you also so beautifully there identified how you've been able to create that. And that's what people watching today, I think, would be really interested in. You had some lessons from your family and lessons from a past relationship. What was it around mindset in particular, and what sorts of things did you kind of say to yourself or build as habits in terms of your mindset to start off and build a successful business and successful relationships since then?
I think the very first step of any change is really awareness, because and also focusing on the right things. So I spent a lot of my life trying to not be like my mom, to not reproduce their mistakes. But because my focus went on what I didn't want, that's exactly what I started to reproduce. So getting, really busy in the business and doing, and getting to a point where I had no bandwidth for my business and for myself, obviously. So once I got that awareness, oh my goodness, I'm just like my mom, and that was a bit scary. Then I could make the decision to do something different, and that's where the shift happens. And the next thing is also the willingness to change, because well, it's great to know what's happening, but then you do have the choice. Do I keep doing what I know because it's comfortable, even though it's very uncomfortable, the result is very uncomfortable, or do I do something completely outside of my comfort zone, which feels very triggering maybe at time, but longer term is so rewarding and sets me on a very different path. So yeah, I was very fortunate through my journey to meet different teachers and learn different ways to well, bring things to awareness, and relationship is a big part of it. Like all the people around us are a reflection of us and give us so many beautiful lessons. And then, well, taking the steps and the learnings so that I could do something different with my life. Yeah.
Wow. And isn't it funny, as people go through their lives and start to recognize different traits in different ways that they've picked up from their mother or their father, and go, oh my God, you know, that's so you're very right. That first step is around the awareness. You know, what is it that I'm doing? I heard some great examples around that, especially to do with money and people's limiting beliefs around money, but it can be limiting beliefs around relationships, especially with significant others, around picking up things, you know, the most subconscious of things, like, you know, he's not good enough for you, or you're not good enough for him, or that job isn't for people like us. So all of these kinds of programs that we absorb as children with our parents, and then we see ourselves kind of repeating. And so wonderful that you actually were able to recognize that as that first suggestion. And then you hit the nail on the head with the second one around the willingness to change and to get out of your comfort zone. I think that change can be uncomfortable. As you were building your business, what sorts of things were maybe a bit uncomfortable for you that you needed to then work through as part of that change journey?
So for me, it's probably the discipline and committing long term to something, so to the business, because I'm someone who has a lot of ideas, who's been looking for happiness outside of me a lot of my life. So I've you know, traveled in over 25 countries, lived in 6 different countries, changed jobs almost every year, explored different industries. So when it came to the business, I had so many ideas that I wanted to explore, so many avenues I was passionate about. So committing to, okay, now I'm doing this. I'm doing relationship and it's coaching and I'm helping these people. At first it was like, no, I want to do all the things. So for me, it was really commitment, and my pattern being to just move on to something different. I needed to ground myself and really find what lit me up. So find my why, find, you know, what was really turning me on, we would say in my world.
I like that, turning me on, because it is one of those things, and I can very much relate, having lived in, I'm moving again at the moment, and it'll be my 7th major life move. But I've also traveled to so many different countries, and I can understand that refinement is the same with as discipline, that refinement about finding your purpose and your goal, and what makes your, I refine it. I describe it as making your heart sing. So finding what for you in your life makes your heart sing. And then, you know, that can be anywhere, doing anything in the world. It's so individual and so perfect. But you raised a really important part of that, which is, if you find that for yourself, you then need to have the discipline to keep working at that. And I can also very relate to with what we've been going through the last few years, not traveling and not having that excitement and having the day-to-day of being in one spot and one group of people, etc. So that committing to yourself and finding your why is such a crucial part, isn't it, of that journey to yourself and to building that mindset. What other things do you think around discipline? Because I think that this is an area that when people are growing and facing those challenges of moving into uncomfortableness out of their comfort zone, what sorts of disciplines did you use there to help you keep going?
I guess I have strong morning and evening routines that change every now and then, but I find that they really set me up for success, because if I don't fill my own cup, I can't overflow, I can't give to anyone. So it really starts from there. So I get up quite early in the morning. I'm very fortunate to live by the beach. So I usually start with a run and a swim in the ocean, a bit of meditation, and then focus on what else needs to be done. But by that point, by 6:30, I've already felt accomplished because I've done so much already. And at the end of the day, it's about reflecting about the day and also dumping any last thoughts so that I'm not churning on them while I'm trying to fall asleep. So I find that having these kind of structures at the beginning and at the end of the day really help, keep my energy to a certain level. And that also goes with, I would call it hygiene, but it's just what I call hygiene is actually my choices when it comes to food and movement. Because, if you eat too much sugar, you get a high, but then you get a down. If you drink too much coffee, you get similar effects on your nervous system. So I'm really mindful of what I eat. And I think that helps me sustain throughout the day and throughout my life, essentially, because our life is a series of habits. So all our habits put together, one after the other, makes our life. Like, there's no one big change, but it's the little changes, the little tweaks. And as I was mentioning before, discipline is not necessarily my forte to start with, but if I just tweak one thing at a time and I keep to it, eventually there's a compound effect, and that's what changes my life in the trajectory of what I want it to be.
So very, very true, because I think what you're describing, the way I describe it is, about the relationship with yourself. So when you were using that wonderful expression about filling your own cup, so the discipline that you were describing was about activities and habits that you've built at either end of the day to fill your own cup, but also very much about that relationship with yourself, so that you're giving to yourself in terms of movement and food, and in some way, or in many ways, a lot of self-nurturing, the swimming, the meditation, and then the reflection at the end of the day. These different habits and tasks, in another way of putting it, are things that you were programming into yourself, your importance, your value, and making yourself just as valuable as the other things that you get to during the day. And I know in the relationship field, especially for women, they can tend to be a bit more self-sacrificing and put others before themselves. So these habits of putting yourself first at either end of the day or even in the middle of the day, it doesn't matter where it is, but it's that conscious choice, I believe, of putting yourself first and then going and taking even the smallest of steps to keep building that as a habit. So well done. These are fabulous examples you're giving.
And I'd like to add, for someone who's single, it's easy to put these things in place. For someone who has children, for example, I often hear the argument, oh, but you don't understand, I don't have time. Now, it's like everything, it's a matter of values and what you prioritize in your life. And if your kids are your priority, you're their role model. Whatever you say, they're probably not listening that much, but what they do, they copy every single move or every single attitude, or even they pick on your energy. So if you're not taking care of yourself, that's what your kids take on board. And that's where it's so important that you look after yourself first, because it's not just about you and you feeling good, it's the impact, the ripple effect it has on all the people around you. Because essentially all the relationships around you are a mirror of yourself. So the way you perceive others, including your children, including your partner, is essentially a mirror, a reflection of who you are and how you feel. So if you feel good about yourself, whatever is thrown at you, you will handle it way better than if you're already stressed and angry, which will put you in a stress situation in a reactive mode.
What a wonderful way of expressing it. And you've so beautifully, again, picked up some of those challenges. And it's interesting, as you were talking about, people with children and the values, etc. I was also thinking about in the workplace and how much people are role models in the workplace. You kind of see the impact and the response to behaviours very quickly with children, because they kind of mirror, like you were saying, and the response is immediate, and they pick up from their families, those behaviours very, very quickly. But you also find that in offices and in businesses, where the people around you adjust to how you're reacting and how you're acting. And in this leadership space especially, I'm always talking about being the role model. So if you find that your calendar is being booked up and booked up and booked up, and you're not saying, well, no, I have this time out at lunchtime for an hour and it's my time for me, and you keep giving into, just squeezing in this meeting or squeezing in that, then that not only affects you, obviously, because you're not having lunch or not having time to take a breath to yourself, but you're also role modeling that to others. And I think that that's a really important point, because like with relationships with children, you can kind of see that mirroring straight away. But in an office situation, and as leaders, whatever role you play in an organisation, role modeling that good mental health that takes care of you and values you, not in a rude way I'm talking about, but just in a clear boundaries kind of way, that this is what time I arrive at the office, and this is what time I leave the office, and this is my time out. And in between those other times, I'm happy to be of service and do whatever you want. But in those other times, that is my time, and I have things I have of value to me, whether it's meditation, swimming in the ocean, or whatever it might be. And I find that, people, in all the different years that I've been coaching and working with people, the people that have very good boundaries and that sense of self-love that keeps those boundaries, or discipline is the other great word, they are very successful, and they're kind of refining and refining and refining. Whereas if your boundaries aren't quite as clear or as structured, they do tend to get encroached on.
Yeah, and people who have these blurry boundaries often would argue and say, oh, but I don't want to disturb, I want to help everybody and all that. But by saying that, in a way, you teach people how to treat you. And if you want them to feel respected as much as you want, or you need to be respected, you need to draw a line in the sand. And they will probably people will probably respect you more for saying, no, I can't do this time, but I'll do that time, rather than say any time, and then the time they pick is the one where it's not your best time. You're doing a disservice to everybody. So you're better off, speaking your truth, saying, well, not right now, and offering an alternative, or speaking the truth, just say, well, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't, work for me, whatever the reason might be. But you're better off being authentic and true and honest than creating stories, because it's going to come back to you. It's going to bite you at some point. So yeah, drawing the line, settings, expressing your boundaries is quite an important thing in any context.
Yeah, and I think that you touched on another really good point there around the truth. So people on one level or another pick up when you're not telling the truth. And sometimes it can be a bit awkward saying, well, look, I just can't do that time because I'm not feeling well enough, but I can't quite describe why I'm not feeling well enough, etc. The thing that I've seen in successful people and successful organisations is the ability to negotiate. All too much media, and especially in the West, celebrates the kind of conflict and being strong, and conflict is the way to resolve everything. Whereas that negotiation and looking for joint answers, win-win, people talk about win-win, but this is the real win-win in action of how can we negotiate so that it suits my values and your time slots and my time slots, and coming to that ground where everybody can be a winner. And sometimes that is even by not coming to an agreement, but you're a winner because in that process, you've actually worked out, well, it wasn't going to work, but you worked it out much quicker than saying yes or negotiating until you both were meeting, you know, at midnight on a Friday night or something. and actually, I'm joking, but now with this global kind of factor, there are people that are working for any kind of time zone, and they are, I hear it all the time, you know, they're working, got meetings at 2 a.m. in the morning and things like that. This is again where these boundaries, whatever the relationship it is, are really important to kind of look at, well, what are your boundaries? You know, is 8 hours sleep or 7 hours sleep one of your boundaries? And then working from there. It might sound strange, but I think especially with Christmas coming up and with it being the end of the year, that this conversation around the boundaries about what you want to do, and where you beautifully talked about filling your own cup, are really important for any of the relationships in your life.
And I think the main reason why people wouldn't communicate their boundaries is because there's a real fear of conflict. But conflict is actually a very healthy process if it's done well. So it's about, you know, two people expressing where they're at and finding a middle ground. But for that, you have to allow the disagreement or this situation to happen, and for it to be a successful resolution and to normalize, to find a common ground, and how we now know how to communicate or how to work together, or within the context of the family, how to communicate with each other. It means that there has to be a certain level of rapport, of respect, and understanding and accepting that we have a different model of the world. So even when we grow up in the same family, so my sister and I obviously grew up with in the same household, that we're very different. We have a very different perception of the world, or even events, like when we bring up, oh, remember that time? Well, we have a very different view on what happened. It's simply because different people have different filters in the brain and perceive it differently. So like expressing your model of the world in a way that without trying to enforce it to someone is a way to finding common ground and normalizing, or finding new foundation to strengthen the relationship, whatever the context might be.
Beautifully explained again. So I love hearing how you're so clearly and concisely explaining these concepts about finding those boundaries, working through the conflicts. The conflicts actually also help you to understand different people's models of the world and how they match yours and don't match yours in different ways. And I think that those skills of being able to find, well, what's the common ground or the middle ground, is something that people can sometimes lose sight of when the way that the message is communicated, or the tone, and you ended those examples so wonderfully talking about, because it's true with families especially, but even with work colleagues and loved ones and relationships. If you ask two people about the same event, you might get two completely different events described. So understanding that people are filtering the world through their own model of the world, and whatever that model might be. So when communicating and explaining, these are the boundaries that I have, and this is when I'm available, not available, for work, for family, for relationships, that communication element is so critical, to be able to say, well, hello, this is my model of the world, and you know, these are the entry points to have conversations about them. They must be respectful, etc. And these are the clear exit points. You know, if you're rude or whatever, then I'm not going to continue in the conversation. And having those boundaries as well, so that you don't kind of, and I don't want to keep saying women, but a lot of women, again, will keep trying to make things work when the boundaries and the relationships may never work, and it kind of is something that takes a lot of your energy. So looking firstly at what are your boundaries, what can you build to take care of yourself and fill your own cup, and then what are those models that you're interacting with your children, your work colleagues, your loved ones, and how you can build stronger foundations for each of those.
And building, like communicating those boundaries is so important, because your partner or your family or your colleagues are not mind readers. So if you don't express them, you're inevitably going to a situation where if it doesn't explode and become like an argument, you will implode, and you will build up resentment, maybe inner anger, and you're going to make yourself sick eventually. It's like drinking the poison and hoping the other one dies, you know. So it's not avoiding conflict altogether, or not voicing what's not working for you or your boundaries is not a healthy process. Now, coming back to the communication piece, so I'm an NLP practitioner, and in NLP, we say that communication is only 7% words. And then the rest is 38% tonality and 55% your body language. So what you say or the words that you use don't matter as much as the way you say it. And that's where when people communicate through emails or text messages, there's a lot of the communication that's lost, and that's where a lot of conflicts start. Because they, oh, you said this, yeah, but I meant it jokingly. Yeah, but no, because depending what space you were in when you read that message, you will have a completely different interpretation. So someone who said, no, I'm not angry, the words end don't say the same story. That really, like, that was the word in that case. Like, I don't want to take
Oh, I know. I think it's funny, the whole no, I'm not angry, or I'm not frustrated, and having that, and you so beautifully brought us back to the beginning part, having that awareness of what's going on for you, building your boundaries and communicating clearly are very much the three themes. And Aurelie, we could talk so much more. And I know that so many people watching this would love to get hold of you. So what's the best way of contacting you?
I think the easiest way is LinkedIn. So you can find me at Aurelie Hervet. So I'm sure it's going to be in the notes somewhere. And otherwise, my website, which is aureliehervet.com. So easy.
Fabulous. And my favorite question, because, you know, being French, beautifully French, I should say, and having lived and traveled and that wonderful world experience as well, and now finding your niche and building your business in this relationship space, what advice or what would you say to your younger self?
I would say relax. It's a relax, because I was a control freak, like, you know, eating disorders or making really myself sick of trying to. I was extremely shy and really scared to talk to people as a kid. So it required a lot of, you know, work to get to the point I can talk to you here. So really controlling everything, because everything felt like it's going to jump at me. So if I could just relax, and I think my mom or some adult would have told me back then, but I guess I had to grow up through it or experience it to understand what they meant. So yeah, I would say to my younger self, relax.
Isn't that a beautiful kind of life journey that you're describing there? That from what you're saying, you know, that control element around your body, so food, motion, and your world, you know, the control, all of those different areas. And now you kind of have gone through that journey, had all of these beautiful experiences, and you can share with people and help them, because you've gone through that journey yourself, from the control to the more relaxed way of approaching getting up in the morning and going for a swim and meditating and reflecting on the day at the end of the day. And all of these beautiful examples that you've used about creating that mindset for success for you that can help you live a fuller and happier life.
Absolutely. Like it's you live, you learn.
You definitely live and definitely learn. Well, Aurelie, I could keep saying that beautiful name over and over, but thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle.
It's been such an absolute pleasure. And to all the viewers, thank you as well for enjoying and sending through all of the different notes that you send and the messages that you share. It really is such an absolute pleasure to keep doing this show. And so from now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.